Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the other side of medicine. I'm Dr. Krystosik, and right now you're entering into the drug-free zone. Here on the other side of medicine, we bring you updated information on how to stay healthy and live a long life in good health. I've been doing this for over 30 years on the radio and on this podcast. And tonight, I'm excited to bring you a topic that I think you're going to find quite interesting. We'll be talking about lifestyle medicine and how it partners with functional medicine. These two types of medicine work together to help to bring people not only good health and help to restore people from chronic disease, but it also helps the people to be able to live a long life in good health, to become independently healthy. Now, what if I told you you could live past 100, healthy and sharp and active without relying on a cabinet full of pills? Well, would that interest you? Well, that's not just wishful thinking, my friends. It's the daily reality for people living in the world's blue zones. These are the people living in the regions of the world that have 10 times, I'm talking about 10 times more centenarians than people living here in the United States. People living in the blue zones where disease is rare and vitality is common, and people thrive into their 90s and into 100 and beyond in good health, full of vitality, and they're living active, and they're not relying on pills, but they're living this kind of a lifestyle, a healthy lifestyle. And today I'm going to give you the blueprint. I'm going to give you a blueprint to get there, my friends, starting from birth and carrying all the way into your ripe old age. We're going to explore nutrition, movement, mindset, and building a community of people that are like-minded to help you to be able to get support. I'm going to teach you the functional medicine tools that'll keep you in peak condition into a ripe old age. I want you to think of this series I'll be doing on lifestyle medicine as your lifelong owner's manual for optimal health. It's the one your doctor never gave you, my friends, because doctors today are relying on medications, surgical procedures, and people are looking for quick fixes. Well, lifestyle medicine is not a quick fix, but it's a proven way. It's a research way to be able to help you to be able to overcome chronic illness and maintain good health for a lifetime. That's something that you're interested in. Well, again, you're in the right place. If you're looking for quick fixes, if you're looking for magic pills, if you're looking for some medication that's going to get you to be able to live a healthy, long life, well, you're in the wrong place. If you're looking for just supplements, some vitamin or mineral or some herb that's a magical pill that's going to help you to be able to overcome chronic illness, you're not in the right place. See, lifestyle medicine, also known as functional medicine, isn't about masking symptoms. It's about finding and fixing the root cause of the disease. I want you to imagine your body as an ecosystem, an ecology system. When one part is stressed out, the whole system is going to suffer. And lifestyle medicine is an operating system that makes functional medicine the safe, natural medicine cure for chronic diseases. It's the way to prevent them and sustain a lifelong, health for your rest of your life, optimal health. Now, let's dive into the core principles of lifestyle medicine. The first one is nutrition. Food is your best medicine. And then movement, daily movement built into your life, not just going to the gym. I'm talking about movement throughout your entire day and stress management using tools like specific breathing techniques, tools to get uninterrupted deep sleep, and the all important support of community, like-minded people helping each other to be able to, get guidance, with, some expert. And again, I've been, doing this for over 50 years. My lifestyle has been replete with all these things that I'm talking about tonight. I'm getting proven results to restore and maintain health for all the members of the community that you get involved with. We have the Gut 911 prescription community, and I encourage you to look into that because that's one of the key principles of people living in the blue zones is community, people supporting each other throughout a lifetime. And when you are living especially in the United States, that people are just looking for quick fixes or living on junk food, and you're surrounded with that, well, it's going to be hard for you to maintain a healthy lifestyle. So connecting with other like-minded people is going to be a huge factor. And speaking of huge factors, your mindset plays a key role in helping you to maintain good health. So my friend, the key to overcoming chronic disease and maintaining health is to embrace the root cause thinking, asking why until you get to the origin of the problem. When this approach is taken to illness, it's embraced, you're going to have the framework, not just to live a longer life, but you're going to have the framework to live a better life. There's a lot of research that has recently been emerging to verify the benefits of this type of lifestyle medicine, this functional medicine model. These two models, they merge together and they form a partnership for longevity and good health. Back in 2018, there was a study published in the medical journal called Circulation. And those researchers in that study, they analyzed over 120,000 people. And they found that over a 35-year period of time, the people who followed 5 low-risk lifestyle factors like a healthy diet, regular exercise, healthy body weight, and not smoking and drinking small levels of alcohol, which can be beneficial if you're drinking some wine, but in small amounts. And the people who follow these principles, these 5 principles, well, they live 14 years longer on average than those who didn't follow these principles. That's not genetics, my folks. That's all about choices. And so the takeaway of this study, the bottom line is your daily habits. They can add years and decades to your life expectancy. And the earlier you start, the bigger the payoff's going to be. Here's the best news. The best news, it's never too late to start. But if there is big dividends that are going to pay off, you're going to have to start off from birth. So making sure if you're starting a young family that you want to have your child follow these principles and help your child to grow up with these principles. So introducing these principles early on in life is important. And, it's been proven that the foundation for lifelong health is built in the first 1,000 years of an individual's life. From birth to the age 2, nutrition shapes what we call the gut microbiome. Well, that's the beneficial bacteria living inside of the gut. And the microbiome shapes our immune health, our brain development, and our metabolism, how we utilize sugar and how we maintain a healthy weight and how our brain functions and how our hormones are, going to be balanced. Here's a few of the foundational principles that set the stage for maximizing health in the first 2 years of life. First of all, breastfeeding is paramount. It's the ideal food for infants. Not formulas, breastfeeding. And research shows that it's linked to lower rates of chronic disease later in life. So be sure that you work with, some of the agencies that help you to learn how to have a baby that's going to be able to breastfeed, efficiently and be able to get your baby the proper nutrition because the parents are eating healthy and getting the infant through that breast milk is critical. And then avoiding unnecessary antibiotics. I can't tell you how many children are getting multiple antibiotics for ear infections and throat infections and bronchial infections, and they're getting them unnecessarily. When you get your child to get breastfed milk, and to eat foods that are whole foods during those first 2 years, and you're making sure that you're not having them eat allergy foods, because a lot of children are developing, allergies early on in life because they're eating a lot of processed foods and they're stressing out their gut and developing these allergic responses. So making sure that you're working with a functional medicine physician to make sure that the child is not developing these food allergies, and to get the child off of the foods that are high allergy foods is very, very important. And you can use herbs and other natural supplements instead of having to rely on antibiotics all the time. Because when you take those antibiotics, just even one course of them, sometimes it'll take years and sometimes not even be able to restore all the beneficial bacteria. So getting alternatives to antibiotics, especially if it's not something that's, serious, like pneumonia or something like that. If your child has, the beginning of a throat irritation, or the beginnings of a pain in the ear, you could use herbs very effectively, and they work very quickly. Again, working with a natural doctor is important. And then introducing a variety of whole foods early on in life to get a diverse diet, chock full of fruits and vegetables and whole grains and fish and minimal amounts of animal proteins. This is going to reduce the allergy risks. And then staying away from dairy, from cow's milk. Now, if you want to have your child eat some dairy, get it from sheep or goat milk products. They provide the same type of protein that mother's milk provides. It's called A2 protein. And when you get cow's milk from these cows that are bred and genetically modified and all kinds of things that are done with farming today of dairy farmers, you're going to get this what's called A1 milk. And that is a bad protein that causes a lot of allergies. So either stay away from dairy or use goat milk and sheep milk products, and that's going to be much better. And rotate those foods and don't have them every day. So it's not about chasing, unreachable goals and unattainable goals. It's about building a healthy lifestyle, a safe environment for those early years for the child to develop. There was a research paper published in Nature Medicine found that infants with diverse gut bacteria by age 1, they had a stronger immune system, and they had fewer allergies and fewer infections of the ear and bronchial systems. And that was found by age 5. If those children had followed those principles and had that healthy gut bacteria, formed inside of their gut, then they had fewer symptoms of these allergy reactions. The researchers noted that the early disruptions, especially from antibiotics or ultra-processed foods, can cause long-term weakened immune system and set the stage for future conditions like autoimmune diseases, which are becoming rampant. So children are having ADD and ADHD and other conditions that are chronic today, and this doesn't have to happen. We can really prevent these things. This is one of the reasons why functional medicine focuses on protecting the beneficial gut bacteria. So the gut microbiome, my friends, right from the start, early on in life, is something you want to protect. So the next stage of adolescence, from the ages 10 to around 18, building strength and resilience is the key to future health and well-being for these young children, in this adolescent years. These teen years aren't just about growth spurts. They're about building a healthy metabolism, including the body's ability to break down and utilize sugar, and to build strong muscles and skeletal reserve so that the teenager, can rely on, good health foundations for years and decades to come. Habits formed during the adolescence years will have a compounding effect on future health. And the key lifestyle factors to focus on during this important stage of life are things like eating nutrient dense foods to support brain development and strength building physical activities to ensure healthy bone development and bone density. And again, learning emotional and stress management skills early on and during these adolescent years will provide healthy and happy environment for the child to grow in. And I want you to think of this as your health savings account. Every good habit is a deposit, and every poor habit is a withdrawal. In 2020, there was a major study of what's called a meta-analysis, and that's where they take several studies and they publish it in one paper, the conclusion from all those studies in one paper. And the journal was called the Translational Sports Medicine Journal. And they showed that adolescents who engaged in regular physical activity, they had better cognitive performance and mental health outcomes, less depression and anxiety compared to their peers who led sedentary lifestyles and got very little physical activity. So the benefits of, this whole kind of lifestyle, this activity in early life continued into their adulthood, demonstrating that the active teenage years can help to protect against later lifestyle mental problems like depression and poor memory and cognitive decline. So now moving into your early 20s and 30s, you're going to be paving the path for health for the rest of your life. The people in the blue zones, the populations I talked about in these 5 regions of the world who have centenarians, 10 times more centenarians than we have here in the United States, and their disease is rare. They have less than 1% of disease in those communities, in those regions of the world, less than 1% of disease. Now, the blue zone regions, again, are changing and they're developing their mindset and lifestyle habits that are the modern lifestyle habits. And so things are changing in the blue zones. We're seeing a decline in the health of the people in the blue zones because they're adopting the Western mindset and lifestyle. So we're talking about, 25, years ago, the people in the blue zones had extraordinary health, but it's starting to decline because they're developing these habits of the Western poor lifestyle. And so the blue zone populations, though, who live still in the healthy habits that they've been doing for hundreds of years, well, they show that movement built into their daily life pay off huge dividends later on in their lives. Well, they don't just go to gyms, my friend. They walk and climb up, hills and mountains, and they garden and they bicycle and they do manual work. It's not about just going to gyms. These people live healthy physical lives and they get better health outcomes later on in life. Here are some of the lifestyle medicine principles that can achieve these healthy outcomes that I'm talking about. You got to eat 80 to 90% of plant-based whole foods. Now that's a lot for the average person to think about doing, but you can move into this kind of a healthy diet and lifestyle over time. It doesn't have to happen overnight. You can become acclimated to it, especially when you start getting acquainted with a community of people who are already living this way. And that's why I said my Gut 911 prescription community gives you an opportunity to be around like-minded people. And I have lots of resources there for you to help you achieve these goals. And I provide the educational tools for you to be able to do that. And then you also want to make sure you build social connectedness. Again, surrounding yourself with, again, these like-minded people who want to achieve optimal health. Isolation is as deadly as smoking, my friends. And then what you want to do is you want to keep inflammation down. We know that inflammation and decline health and a slowing or actually, accelerating the aging process is associated with inflammation throughout the entire body, especially when you got inflammation in the gut. So, eating the whole food diet once again and consciously working on daily stress reduction techniques is very, very important to reduce inflammation. Taking herbs and supplements to help reduce inflammation. But again, remember, food is the best medicine. Lifestyle is the best medicine. Your body is very forgiving, my friends, but the price you're going to pay for poor habits will come due later in life with chronic disease. So make sure you follow the principles that I'm talking about. Back in 2019, there was a study published in Nature magazine, and they introduced a concept called inflammaging. Inflammation and slowing down the aging process by reducing inflammation. Chronic low-grade inflammation, as I said, accelerates the aging process and increases your risk for chronic disease. And these lifestyle interventions that I'm talking about, particularly when you eat a healthy diet, an anti-inflammatory diet, by eating, leafy green foods and beans and legumes and nuts and seeds that are raw, and getting good healthy fats from things like omega-3 rich fish, like wild-caught salmon and other fish that are loaded with these good oils, sardines, and these types of fish will help to significantly lower the inflammatory markers in your blood. And you can actually see these markers come down by getting these blood tests when you make these changes. And you're going to reduce your risk for heart disease and diabetes and degeneration of the brain. And you're going to help to improve your mental skills and your mental cognition. So this is important. These are things that are going to really pay off huge dividends if you follow them. And then when you get into the midlife diet and lifestyle habits, you're going to guard against declining health in your 40s and 50s. And if you're not careful, if you're not smart, making good health choices, chronic disease often begins silently during these years. You start to get high blood pressure, and you start to have what's called insulin resistance because many people are eating way too much sugar, and they're eating way too many refined carbohydrates. My friends, carbohydrates are not the problem. Eating whole food carbohydrates, like whole grains, like brown rice and quinoa and millet that are not refined, and even eating whole wheat, like especially Icorn wheat, which has not been genetically modified, and getting these whole wheat products. Not everybody is gluten sensitive. Not everybody needs to avoid gluten. And that's why I recommend doing a blood test. As a functional medicine physician, I encourage my patients to get tested for hidden food allergies. Many people are avoiding things like gluten, and they're not allergic to those gluten foods, but they're allergic to other foods that they're eating every single day. And unbeknownst to them, their body's having these inflammatory reactions to these foods, and it's causing symptoms and chronic diseases. Yes, allergies can lead to chronic diseases. And these are what we call hidden food allergies. So getting tested is key in personalizing the diet so you don't have these delayed food allergies that are causing problems and creating symptoms and chronic disease in your life. And the inability to use sugar efficiently and overtaxing your body's metabolism, and it's going to really pay, a really hard and harsh difficulties in your life. So this is one of the areas of functional medicine shines: early detection and reversal of symptoms before they become irreversible. When you end up having something like osteoarthritis and your joints get damaged and the deterioration of the joints occur, there's no way that you're going to be able to re reform those joints and that cartilage. Not going to happen. Those bones, and when they deteriorate and that cartilage deteriorates, it's not going to be able to reform again. And that's why people end up getting surgeries and having knee replacements and shoulder replacements and hip replacements. You don't have to have these things happen if you catch it early on and get rid of these inflammatory markers and eat an anti-inflammatory diet and live a healthy lifestyle. You don't want to compromise your health, especially during the early 40s and 50s. You can get early detection to prevent these problems later on in life. You should be getting annual functional health tests to test your gut health, and test your hormones, and look for inflammation markers inside your blood, and getting tests for nutrients. I test for all my patients for 31 different nutrients. Now, if you go to the family doctor and test for things like, say, B12 or calcium or potassium or magnesium or sodium, they're going to be doing tests that look at the function of the nutrients that are not going to be what's going on for long-term effects. They're looking at short-term effects, and we're looking at what's going on for 3 to 6 months in your bloodstream and in your cells of your body. We're going to be looking at that through the tests that we do, not just for short term, because you could have a test done today for a blood test done by conventional blood tests for nutrients, and a week later, you're going to have a deficiency showing up. So it changes dramatically. When you do an internal test instead of an external test, you're going to get a 3 to 6 month window of what the nutrients levels inside your body are. Now, getting efficient sleep and rest, 7 to 9 hours of sleep, restorative sleep every single night is extremely important. Uninterrupted sleep. And then, of course, daily physical activity, creating movement in multiple forms, like aerobic exercises and strength building exercises and flexibility exercises and balance exercises. These are all important. So if you can keep inflammation down, if you can manage stress, you can keep your weight under control during these 40s and 50s, you're going to set yourself up for healthy decades, for years ahead to come, to have a lifelong, independently healthy life. So again, the power of early detection is extremely important, especially during the 40s and 50s. That's where functional medicine shines, my friend, because it's all about finding out problems before they become permanent. Again, as I said, you don't want to get to that point where you have damage to brain cells or to nerves or bones. You can't regenerate again the cartilage in your joints. But if you prevent those problems, you can prevent having surgeries and having pain of osteoarthritis and other types of pains that come from neglecting yourself during those 40s and 50s, and especially if you're not doing and following the principles we're talking about. And your blood sugar levels may be creeping up during this time of your life. That's the beginning of what we call insulin resistance. And then, the blood pressure kind of slowly rising. That's like a warning light on your dashboard of your car. Your body's telling you, to be aware of what's going on so that you don't have chronic heart disease or cancer or liver disease or dementia or other kinds of problems. So getting comprehensive functional medicine lab work is important. For my patients, I do stool tests to look at the good and the bad bacteria. We look for parasites. We look to see if you have inflammatory markers in your gut. We look to see, many of the functions inside of the gut that will help to make sure that you prevent disease. We look for markers of things like what we call secretory IgA, which are markers for inflammation, and tells us if you have hidden food allergy, risk for hidden food allergies. These tests are very, very important. It's not about just going to the doctor and getting a blood test for cholesterol. You need to test for markers of inflammation. You need to check for shifts in the hormone levels, nutrient deficiencies, and imbalances in the gut. If these things are out of balance, they're going to lead to chronic disease. And the earlier you act, the easier it's going to be to reverse disease. Reversing chronic disease is something that I have seen over and over again over the last 35 years that I've been practicing functional medicine, lifestyle medicine. Back in 2017, there was a study that was published in the very famous Lancet Medical Journal, and they found that preventative health screenings combined with lifestyle interventions, they reduced all-cause mortality, all cause of death, by up to 20% over a 10-year period. These results, they really highlight it's not just about detecting disease, it's about acting on findings early on with getting proper nutrition, getting proper movement, and getting targeted therapies before the damage is done is very critical. So nutrition in midlife, as we age and our metabolism changes and our muscle mass oftentimes declines because we're not getting the right movement, we're not getting the right nutrition, we're having too much stress in our life, we're going to have decreased nutrients absorption, and it's going to become less efficient. And that means that midlife nutrition needs to be much more intentional. It needs to be much more focused on, and the family doctors of today know very little bit about optimal nutrition. Focusing on fiber-rich foods to help to reduce inflammation and promote gut health, and eating fermented foods to get the probiotics that are going to feed the good bacteria and promote good bacteria inside of your gut, and eating a rainbow, plate of foods with all the colorful foods from fruits and vegetables and whole grains and beans and nuts and seeds, and getting plenty of antioxidants, and limiting the ultra processed foods that the average American is eating. It's not just optional to do these things, it's essential to do these things. You're going to be able to reduce inflammation by doing these things. You're going to improve your gut microbiome. That's the balance of good and bad bacteria in your gut. And you're going to live independently healthy, as I talked about earlier on. So in 2019, there was another study, a meta-analysis. That's a combination, again, of several studies in the Lancet Medical Journal. And they reviewed and they found that people eating a high fiber diet, they found that they had a 15 to 30% reduction in all cause of mortality, in all causes of death. That's reduced risk of heart disease and cancer and strokes and diabetes. And the authors recommended at least 25 to 30 grams of fiber per day. Now, in functional medicine, we recommend 50 to 100 grams of fiber per day. And the indigenous tribes around the world, the people of the blue zones, they're getting anywhere from 150 to 200 grams of fiber per day. And their diversity of their gut microbiome is significantly better than ours. The average American in America has about 100 different types of microorganisms living in their gut. The average person in the blue zones and indigenous tribes around the world who are eating natural foods, they have over 300 varieties of different types of microorganisms living in their gut. And the inflammatory markers in their gut are significantly lower than ours. And they live without chronic disease. Less than 1% of their population has it. So we really need to focus on getting optimal gut health. And again, movement is important in midlife. You can't just take supplements or herbs or vitamins and then live a sedentary lifestyle and expect to be healthy. Movement is one of the most powerful anti-aging tools we have, especially during that midlife years. It helps to maintain your muscle mass and your bone density, and it helps to keep that insulin sensitivity so that you're utilizing blood sugars properly and you're not developing early onset of diabetes, whether it's type 2 diabetes or you have type 1 diabetes. You can help to improve those conditions and reverse type 2 diabetes within weeks. And I've seen it done with many of my patients who've had type 2 diabetes, and in just a matter of weeks, their blood sugars are stable and they're able to get off medications. This rarely happens in these populations who exercise and their daily lifestyle is replete with all kinds of physical activity. They integrate movement into their day, as I said, gardening and walking in the hillsides and chopping wood. And, you should be doing some kind of physical activity every single day. A half hour of walking or bicycling or swimming, whatever you can do. And then just getting movement throughout the entire day. Frequent, bursts of activity are going to help to lower your risk for inflammation and keep your metabolism in optimal function and make sure that you maintain good weight. So all these things are essential for maintaining a healthy body, especially in those 40s and 50s. And again, lots of studies prove this. And there was a study in the Journal of Sports Medicine back in 2022. And they found as little as just like 10 to 11 minutes of moderate physical activity every single day was associated with a 20% lower risk of premature death. That's powerful. Movement is medicine. And the researchers concluded that more is better. My friends, even small amounts, consistent doses of movement can have significant benefits on your health. And then managing stress. The hormone cortisol, that hormone accelerates the aging process. That's called the stress hormone. And chronic stress in midlife is going to accelerate the biological aging by compounding the effect of aging by years. Elevated cortisol levels not only affects your sleep and your mood, but it also increases belly fat around that abdominal area, and it suppresses your immunity, and it damages your brain. And then over time, you end up having things like dementia and Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease. And again, these people in the blue zones and these indigenous tribes around the world, they don't have these chronic brain disorders. They don't have elevated levels of cancers and heart disease and diabetes. So the antidote to eliminate stress, it's never going to be possible to do that. There's no antidote for that. You can't eliminate stress, but you can build recovery from stress into your daily routine by doing deep breathing and prayer and meditation and just spending time in nature and simply connecting with loved ones will help to reset that stress response in your life. So again, research over and over shows that stress management is going to be something that's significant. Back in 2014, there was a study that was found in the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, and they found that individuals with chronic stress had significantly shorter telomeres. Now, what are telomeres? Well, they're the protective caps on the ends of our chromosomes, and they compared the to the low stress levels of people. When people have lower stress levels, they had longer telomeres. These telomeres, when you have shorter ones, they accelerate the aging process. The longer the telomeres are, the longer you live. And so again, my friends, the good news is stress reduction and stress reduction intervention with mindfulness. And, like I said, doing physical activity has been shown to slow and even reverse the aging process. So again, those things that we're talking about, the things that we're discussing here tonight, including the social factors, will help to improve longevity. Again, isolating yourself during the mid, 40s and 50s and those years by, because you're raising children and, you've got career pressures and the pressure of daily life, leaves many times parents a little time for being able to connect with other people. Well, it's important that during those 40s and 50s that you have a good community of people that you connect with, a church community, a family community that you have with that you meet on a regular basis and that you connect with. And the blue zones again prove that strong social networks are a non-negotiable part of life. Friendships, community engagement, and family bonds just make life richer. They lower stress levels, boost the immunity, and they extend lifespan. In fact, loneliness has been linked to higher mortality than even obesity. Isn't that amazing? So if you have loneliness, you have a higher risk than people who are obese for living a shorter life and dying younger. So, my friends, we could talk a lot more about these things, but I want to conclude because next week I'm going to have the second part of this lifestyle medicine, this functional medicine blueprint, so that you can take advantage of it. Tell your family and friends about this, and we'll be posting this on social media, and you can review this information to share it with others. Subscribe to my channel. Tell your family and friends about our Gut 911 prescription community. And I just want you to remember that for the first 100 people that join my Gut 911 prescription community, it's absolutely free for lifetime access. After we have 100 people into that group, it's going to be a monthly subscription model that you have to pay so much per month to get the benefits of that community. Right now, it's free. Take advantage of it. So, until next week, I encourage you to follow us on Facebook, follow us on YouTube, tell your family and friends about us, like us, make comments, and if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them for me, and I'll be happy to answer them for you in a timely manner. Be patient because I get a lot of requests, but I will get to them, I promise you. So until next week, my friends, here's to your health.